Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who Season 24, Story 2, Paradise Towers. And this is much better than Time to Ronnie. This is a vast improvement. For starters, I know what the plot's about. I know what the story's about. I can understand it. The main villain is not the only good thing in this story, although Richard Bryce is possibly the best thing in the story, or at least in parts 1 to 3. Part 4, his acting's when, spoiler alerts, the character of the chief caretaker is taken over by the Great Architect, and he gets his body possessed by him. After that, he just acts a bit awkwardly and a bit strangely. But definitely for parts 1 to 3, he's fantastic. And so delicious. Sylvester McCoy has upped his game as the performance of the Doctor from the last story, and we also seem to have a few of his kind of darker moments seep through. Of course, they hadn't really decided to go with the darker Doctor just yet. He was still a bit fumbly, clowning around. But I think this as at least starts showing some of those darker moments into his characters, some, or at least the more mysterious angles. And at the same time, his fun and comedic angles are still really enjoyable to watch. And it's great seeing his performance on screen. And yeah, McCoy is just really enjoyable. And I love the bit where he pretty much tricks some guards into pretty much letting him escape, or at least doing stuff that would allow him to escape. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. This is in part 2. It's really good. He also has a really good relationship with the Kangs, which I'll talk about in a bit. As for Mel, she's still annoying. I still think Bonnie Lanker's a bit miscast. She's more likeable here than Time to Ronnie. She might still be less likeable than in Trial of a Time Lord, though. I think it's middle ground at the moment. I will say they do try to get her to do stuff, whilst at the same time doing very little as well. But, you know, there is some interesting stuff that she gets to explore, like the... it's implied that these two old ladies she meets in part 1 and then comes back in part 2 for another visit. It's implied they're cannibals, as they trick young girls, usually the Kangs before this point, until they caught wind of the situation, and they would eat them. I think that's implied, and they're going to do the same to Mel until Pegs, who I'll also talk about in a bit, comes in and I was going to say saves her, but actually just distracts one of them after the other had been sucked down into the ventilation shaft by a hand, and then the other one gets the same thing when she goes for another knife after throwing it at Pegs. By the way, I can clearly see the wire at that point. And again, health and safety, you have to be careful, I suppose. It doesn't hide the wire. Bit strange. This story is a very strange story. It's trying to be dark, but comedic at the same time. But to be fair, it's got some good stuff. The Kangs are groups of teenage girls who are, gangs of teenage girls, I should say. Got the red Kangs, the blue Kangs, and the yellow Kangs, although we only see one of them, and she dies pretty early on. And they're soon no more, as in they're soon made unalive, as in they're killed. Made unalive is their speech. Yeah, they've got some funny ways of speaking in Paradise Towers, especially the Kangs. But, you know, they're okay to watch. They're quite fun, enjoyable. They can be a bit annoying in places, though. That is that I will admit. They can be very annoying in places, but when they're not being annoying, they're okay. They're quite fun, and the same can be said for the blue Kangs, although we don't see much of them. The yellow Kang, like I said, we just get one scene of, and she's okay there. The caretaker is also really good, especially, as I said, Bryce is the chief caretaker, and also the deputy, who's quite fun, and I like how he turned to being a good guy at the very end, and how at the very end of the story, everyone comes together. The Kangs, the Rezzies, and the caretakers, they all come together to fight off the Great Architect, and then at the very end, they all gather to honour Pegs, who, by the way, does not fall under the category of caretakers who take care of the building, the residents who live in the buildings, and the Kangs, who are the younger residents of the building. The residents are the Rezzies are the older people, and the Kangs are the younger ones, or at least young girls. I don't know what's happened to the boys. They don't seem to know what a boy is. The closest thing to a boy they probably know is Pegs, and even then he's still an adult. And it turns out that although he claims that he was sent on a mission to clean up Paradise Towers, it then turns out that he's actually a coward who's run away from the situations. However, throughout the story, he does try his best to actually help, although he doesn't really do an awful lot of helping. apart from maybe distracting one of the cannibal old ladies until the very end. So he's a bit useless until the very end. I don't know if that's supposed to be a character growth or not. But I do like he does sacrifice himself to save the Doctor in the end. Oh god, I sound like I'm talking about a new series story. Maybe that's where it started. Well, no, it's already started, but yeah, but I still feel like I'm talking about a new series story in that respect. But yeah, he sacrifices himself to save the Doctor and kill the great architect who is possessing Richard Bryce's character's body, the chief caretaker. And yeah, there's a really good mystery throughout the story. What is going on at Paradise Towers, no one seems to want to know, and they don't want to say anything about what they do know. So the Doctor and Mel, well, mainly the Doctor, go through the mystery, try and resolve the mystery. I mean, to be fair, Mel is just obsessed with getting back to the pool, either just so she can meet the Doctor back there, as that was their agreed meeting point, and or so she can finally get to have a swim in that pool. And everyone's kind of getting a bit scared about the thing that kills people, that makes people unalive in their speech at the pool. They get all scared about it. It just turns out to be a toy robot, or at least a big toy robot. And yeah, whilst it could drown Mel, it's not something that can't be taken out easily. She shoots it with Pets' gun a few minutes later. Yeah, thanks for not helping, Pets, by the way. You could have showed us some bravery by shooting the thing. But it does give Mel a good time to shine of shooting the monster, the robot, and it's made unalive. I need to stop speaking like how they spoke. Next thing you'll know is I'll be saying ice hot instead of ace when things are cool. Oh God. What is this story doing to me? No! Okay, I'm just providing some fun entertainment for both myself and you audiences. I'm doing a Stuart Hardy style scream. So check out his videos. They're dark but fun. Most of them. Some of them are a little less dark than others. Anyway, so yeah, the Doctor eventually discovers what's going on. He realizes where he's heard the name of the Great Architect. I can't remember the name, but that's why I'm calling him the Great Architect. But he remembers where he got the name from, and he starts piecing things together, and eventually he's able to try and plan a way to stop the Great Architect, and eventually defeats him. There's also these really cool caretaker robots going around that kill people. The chief caretaker allows some of his caretakers to be killed so they can be fed to the Great Architect as part of the overall plan. How the chief caretaker got involved in trying to help this guy escape after he was imprisoned by the former residents, or the older residents at the very least, before the war, I believe. But because he was insane, he's a psychopath, a bit like the chief caretaker. But I don't know why the chief caretaker got involved with him. Did he have some sort of relationship with the guy? It would have been nice to know. Or does he just spend so many years looking after him that he started forming an attachment to him and kind of considered him a child in a way, and has now started dedicating his life to helping him, including letting himself be taken over by his pet, which he calls himself Daddy. Yeah, that's weird. The creature the Great Architect just does kind of this typical deep voice going hungry quite a lot, but soon he starts saying some actual stuff, and then things are revealed at the end of part 3 and in part 4. It then becomes a mission to stop the Great Architect / the chief caretaker and the robots. And like I said, it brings everybody together at stages and points, and it comes up with a good way to stop the robots and stop the chief caretaker / the Great Architect, and comes to a pretty satisfactory ending. I think the script is handled well. I think there are some bits that aren't so great, but it's handled well. I think the execution is a bit muddled in places. For starters, we open, I think every episode, I might be wrong with part 1, opens on a shot Paradise House. That's nice. But then we cut inside the building for a little bit with the Kang being chased. And then we just cut back inside the TARDIS. And it's that same problem with these 80s stories where they open on something and they spend little time there before cutting to a TARDIS scene, and then they keep cutting back and forwards, and it gets a bit annoying after a while. Actually, it gets pretty annoying early on, to be honest. And some of the editing does feel a little disconjointed in places. But I will say the direction and the acting is a good job. Again, like I said, some of the characters can be a little bit annoying, like some of the Kangs, but likable in other places. And you just need a bit of getting used to the story. It's actually quite fun. To be honest, it's a bit of a fun story. And unlike Time and Ronnie, I know exactly what they wanted with this story. I know it's a dark, morbid mystery with these strange characters who live in this place, and the Doctor and Mel, specifically the Doctor, to be honest, have to try and find out what's going on. And then when the evil has come out, they've got to stop it, and eventually bring everybody together to save the day and live in peace afterwards. I can get that. So I got that story. I got it more than Time in the Ronnie, which was the Ronnie was making a big brain and using the intelligence of geniuses for stuff. And there was this meteor of antimatter or something. Was it antimatter? I think so. And the stuff with the people and the planets and the back creatures. And it wasn't the fact that Time in the Ronnie was so complicated it didn't make sense. It's just that it just didn't make sense. It wasn't complicated. Complicity, it just didn't make sense. Here it makes sense. There's simple stories, and what doesn't make sense then, and what doesn't make sense earlier on, makes sense at the end, apart from why the chief caretaker is doing all of this. That's my only issue with the idea, is that they don't explain it. Maybe in another draft of the script or a deleted scene it might have done, but I don't know, but I think he's still a really good villain, and Bryars is definitely the best actor in the story, with McCoy coming very close afterwards. Same with Time in the Ronnie, he came very close after Kate O'Mara, although I did like quite a few of the actors in that story. Here, I think lots of people do a really good job, and I think the characters are handled well for the most part. I mean, some, like I said, you have to get used to some of them, otherwise you'll find them quite annoying in places. I think my favourite characters after Chief Caretaker and the Doctor were probably Tabitha and Tilda, who were the cannibalist old ladies who wanted to eat Mel. They were just really enjoyable to watch on screen. How do you put on this charade of being really kind old ladies who are just trying to give Mel some tea and crumpets and cakes and stuff, just trying to be really nice. And then it turns out they were trying to fatten her up and so they can eat her. Oh, at least that's what it's implied. And I love that. I thought that was great. I also like Pex, and I also like the deputy caretaker. I thought they were good characters. And like I said, the Kangs and some of the other residents, they get, well, one other resident, I should say specifically, get more likable as we see more of them on screen. They're quite enjoyable. And yeah, like I said, the Seventh Doctor has a great relationship with the Kangs later on down the story. He's really funny. He even gets them some, a nice, what Americans would call soda, fizzy drink over here. He gets them a nice, cool, fizzy drink. And yeah, they love him for that. So, Paradise Towers, I consider to be a good story. I think there is a few executional issues in, mostly with the editing. It just feels a bit, it's good, some good music though. Some really good stuff. And yeah, I've been mostly talking positive stuff about this story, but I will admit it's not completely perfect. I think it needed a bit more of a fix up in the editing, at least in part one. At least the very start of part one, at the most, could have been sorted out in the editing, and there could have been a little bit more of a script touch up. But what we got, I think Paradise Towers is a good story. I think it's an enjoyable one, and yeah, I think McCoy does a great job as the Doctor. He's got himself settled into role after Time in the Ronnie. I think he did a good job there as well, but I think he's definitely got the character down here, and I find it enjoyable, interesting, and well done. So I'm going to give Paradise Towers a 7 out of 10. Had a bit more of a editing and even a script touch up, I think this one could have been an 8, maybe even a 9. But I think it tells the story. It does, but I think it tells its story really well. And yeah, it's enjoyable. It's dark, but it's fun, which can also be said for the next story, Delta and the Bannerman. Okay, this one's kind of flips-flops between light and dark in places throughout the story, but that makes it even more enjoyable as far as I'm concerned. So next time, Delta and the Bannerman, which to me feels like one of the least talked about Doctor Who stories. And when it does, it kind of splits the fandom base into people who like/love it and people who don't like it/hate it. You're a very polarizing story when you're talked about, which isn't often at all. Well, for me, this is going to be the complete opposite of the Space Pirates. This is going to be good, fun, enjoyable entertainment. Much better than the Space Pirates. And why do I address the Space Pirates? Well, a friend/fellow YouTuber, Jack McCulloch, for some reason he prefers the Space Pirates over this. I mean, yeah, Patrick Charles, Fraser Hines and Wendy Papper are in that story, but Delta and the Bannerman does everything else better. Simple fact. And I might decide to do some comparisons between the two, just as an example, and it will also help the people who maybe aren't fans of this story understand why, personally, I consider it better than Space Pirates, depending whether they prefer Space Pirates over this story or not. And also examples of two stories that are hardly talked about, and when they are, it comes to very polarizing opinions. So we'll talk about that next time in the review of Delta and the Bannerman. And also, before we wrap up with Paradise Towers, also want to mention that this is the first story by writer Stephen Wyatt, who would go on to write The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, and that's also a really dark and fun story as well. So looking forward to that one. That's at the end of the next season, but season 25, I believe, is my favourite classic series. That or season 26, maybe season 13. It's one of those three. Probably 25, but yeah, we'll get to that one shortly, and I'm looking forward to that. Wyatt does a great job there. So that's it from my review of Paradise Towers. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. And he also has a really good relationship with the Kangs. That's great. And he also has a really good don't know if she's less, but at least it gives Mel a good. And it was just too and it wasn't so much complicated. It was the fact that it just, I don't know what it was. Probably one of the least talk of. This is going to be the complete opposite. But everything else is worse, or at least mostly worse. But everything else that's done in that story is worse than what Delta and the Bannerman. So, yeah. And I might be doing some comparisons next time if I decide. And I might do this. So, we'll talk about that next time. But, yeah, and Delta and the Bannerman. But, so, thank you for watching my review of Paradise Towers. And I'll see you guys next. And again,